Okay, I'd be happy to take your questions, but I want to start off by answering one question that's probably on your mind right now, and that is, why on earth would you want to be governor? I get that question a lot. The state's out of money. The state has the lowest credit rating in the country. This huge, budget deficit. Why on earth would you want to be governor? Let me just tell you why. I think this is a perfect time to be running for governor. Sometimes it takes a crisis in order to get this great state back on track. And I plan to put together a new coalition. We need a new revolution, really. To put a new group of people together that we've just had enough of this. And the Republican Party, we have to play an important role here. Now, there's some people running who want to try to convince Republicans that we need to rebrand the Republican Party, or we need to move the Republican Party to the center. That's wrong. That's a mistake. Instead, we need to elect Republicans in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. that believe in conservative core principles and will fight for them. Now, my core principles, so you know, are as follows. Individual liberty. I believe that's the most important duty that I have as governor, is to protect your individual liberty. I believe in personal responsibility. I am passionate about free markets, and I want smaller, accountable government. We get in trouble as a party when we elect people who don't stand tall on those core conservative principles. And so I promise you this, working together, I will stand tall. I will stand tall on those principles. And working together, we can and we will get this great state of California back on track. So I want to take questions on any subject. Sir, you stood up, so you get the first question.
Every person that runs for public office, sooner or later, the very first thing they come up with is education. All the governors that we've had, from Governor Wilson, Governor Majan, everybody is going to fix education. And nobody is fixing education. Our system just continues to deteriorate. Not only does it deteriorate from just people not doing anything, but how do you propose to cope with the union that dominates our school system? That's one thing that needs to be looked at. Another thing is, how in the world did our state of California, with an economy that is sixth in the entire world, get $25 billion in debt? Someone up there is not looking at the books, and someone is not taking care of business. There are too many perks that goes with all of the things that the legislators have. It's like the automobiles.
These are like 5 or 6 tough questions here.
What do I mean?
Only 2 or 3 tough questions at a time. Those are all good questions. You made a lot of good points. Now, first of all, let me see if I can go in a reverse order. But the fact is, a year ago, we had a $20-some-odd billion budget deficit. And a year before that, we did. Now, I don't know if you saw the movie Groundhog Day, but it's kind of reminding us, it happens over and over and over again. What is going on? Now, a year ago, the governor and the legislature passed a $25 billion tax increase over 2 years to solve the budget deficit problem once and for all. Now, I'll tell you, the taxes did go up, but the budget deficit didn't go away. You all should be angry about that. I am. The fact is, we now have one of the highest tax structures in the country, and our budget deficit is still the largest in the country. It's just wrong. And so my budget plans, no more smoke and mirrors, no more accounting gimmicks, no more raising taxes, and no more debt. And we have to do that, and that will balance the budget. We have to. Now you may wonder, well, how am I going to get any of this done? I think that's a good question. But we're in such a jam now. We're in a meltdown mode. And the way I run for governor, honestly, it's going to be completely different than anybody else. I want to run for governor being very specific about what I stand for, my core principles, and my solution, my vision for getting California back on track. And then when I'm elected, it's because people knew what I stood for in advance. And that'll give me that extra political capital I'm going to need to fight the battle. Now, the battle is going to be, against mainly the public employee unions. I mean, you said it. That's your second question, I think. The public employee unions. Now, I have over 1,000 public employee union members who work for me. A lot of good people, a lot of passionate, public sector-oriented people that work for me, at least. But the union leadership, those public employees comprise a small percentage of the total population, and honestly, the lion's share of the power, the political power. And they're able to wield that power very effectively by pulling money out of every one of those 300,000 state employees, those 350,000 state employees. They pull money out of their paychecks every month to create these political action committees. Now, here's what I support, because we've got to do something about that. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. I support this initiative that's being circulated.
That's right here.
Do you have it,
Yep.
Scott?
Right here.
Well, awesome. This is an initiative that's being circulated now. I would strongly recommend that you sign it before you leave so we can get this on the ballot. This initiative will prohibit pulling money out of state employee paychecks automatically. Now, if a state employee wants to, write a separate check to a political cause, that's their right. But it shouldn't automatically come out of their paychecks using government computer systems. So this is a paycheck protection initiative. This will make a big difference. And your first question on education, I completely understand your frustration. But let me just say one thing about me versus other people who are running for governor. And there's only one other person running for governor, so I guess you know what I'm talking about. And we're two good people running. It's great to have choices. But it's one thing, though, to get up here and say I want to reform education. It's another thing to look at my track record. What have I done? Now, the fact is I took a year of my life to be in the classroom for a year in a low-income area. Now, how many people have done that are in politics? And so I really, I did what I had to do to learn the conditions. And then I went out, and it's just a handful of us. I helped pioneer the entire charter school movement. I'm the founder of the California Charter Schools Association, started a bunch of charter schools, and I really do think the model for fixing our public schools is based on the local control concept that charter schools are built on. So I hope that when I talk about reforming, public schools, it's with a little bit more believability than some of these other politicians that really just say it but don't really have any understanding of the problems. Next question, you can pick them out.
Yes. Steve, where do you stand on elder abuse?
Well, I'm absolutely against it.
That's the foundational question. Suppose you had a trustee that's administering a lot of money for a lot of elders, and they're required in their charter and by law to keep their assets, the assets of their beneficiaries, in the state, in a bank guaranteed by the United States government. And they transfer the funds out of state into tax-free bonds that are not guaranteed. Is that elder abuse?
Well, I don't know all the specifics of that situation, but I can tell you that in my view, honestly, I'm not saying that just because I'm at Leisure World, where my parents were happy for many, many years. Not this Leisure World, but the one in Laguna Hills, right? Is that close by too? Yeah. So anyhow, I honestly believe that senior citizens need to get the priority focus of consumer protection. Like the Department of Insurance, when I got there 3 years ago, I formed a senior citizens protection task force because not everyone in the insurance industry is all that ethical. Now, most people are, but some people try to abuse seniors by selling them all these annuities and reverse mortgages, and sometimes those are fine products, but sometimes they take advantage of seniors who really shouldn't be investing in those kinds of things. So at least in my case, let me just tell you where my heart is. I put lots of extra resources at the department on focusing on protecting senior citizens, and as governor, it will be a high priority for me as well.
I would like to know what you think of having a part-time legislature that only meets twice a year, and how would you get that to go?
Did any of you here watch or listen to John and Ken? I'm just curious. Well, then you. I like John and Ken. I'm a huge fan of a part-time legislature. Now, to be honest with you, if we can get away with it, I'd be in favor of a no-time legislature. Here's why I'm such a supporter of a part-time legislature. Now, 42 states have it in the United States right now, including Texas and big states. California had a part-time legislature from 1850 to 1967. In my opinion, when we converted to a full-time legislature in 1968, that was the beginning of the deterioration point. Now, you have a bunch of career politicians now in the legislature. I'm talking Republicans and Democrats alike. You don't want career politicians. If you had a part-time legislature, cut their salary in half, they'd have to have a paycheck coming from someplace else. They'd have to come from the real world. And that's what we need. The people that have real world experiences in the legislature, part-time legislature is a great idea.